Well, Agency Enlightened is here, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoy this module as much as I enjoyed making it for you and delivering it to you today for free. Oh my God, for free from my heart and from the heart of all of humanity. Enjoy and know that I am no longer in business. I've sold pretty much all my equity in BetterAMS. I'm now an inactive partner who holds a minor stake, and that is official, signed on the dot. Wow, 7 or 8 years of running and that thing and starting it, and I am out, ladies and gents. It feels fantastic, and I pray that all of you who are going on this journey are served well by the content in Agency Enlightened, and that it helps you reach a point where you have financial freedom and that you can live in the middle of the jungle and hold this tripod thingy with a straw hat and talk about whatever you want to talk about, okay? So enjoy this module, and know also that there's a link in the description for accessing the resources and the action items that you need to, complete whatever the module is. It's all there, it's all free. And know that if you want to support the nonprofit that I'm starting called Satori, you can go in the link in the description and you'll be able to opt in to be notified when the Satori podcast goes live, which is going to be probably in a matter of 2 or 3 months or something like this. Real quick, before the module begins, you can just fast forward and skip this intro because it's going to be on the every single module intro if you don't want to know this. But Satori is a nonprofit dedicated or devoted to helping mankind realize the self by sharing God's word. So that's what I want to do, and that seems to be where all my energy is going these days. If that sounds interesting to you, you can go and check it out and drop your little email in the landing page thing, okay? Thank Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Mary, Mother Teresa, and all the great sages and avatars that walked on this earth. May it be so that all of what is spoken out of Satori is heard and understood by all of mankind, and that it is felt as the gift that it is from my heart, okay? Mwah! I love you all very much.
All right, ladies and gents, welcome to this video. My name is Taylor Renshard, and we are going to go over the operating system module. Super excited to go through this with you. Here's what we're going to cover: the agency operating system, popular systems, BetterAMS operating system, and getting started. So, playbook. An agency operating system is like a playbook. For a leadership team to run a business effectively, it needs a playbook that basically lays out all the expectations for everybody on the team at every moment in the game. Super important. The benefits of one is that really it keeps everyone in the same direction, keeps everybody aligned. It makes sure that the vision that you have is being worked towards by everybody, and it's held in mind. And expectations, processes, accountabilities, these things are defined so that everyone is in sync and operates smoothly and knows that what they're working on is helping the business go in the right direction, and it's in alignment with what everybody else is working on. This is really the power of an agency operating system. Now, the consequences of not using one is really the antithesis of everything I just said. So you're going to be dealing with miscommunication, people rowing in different directions. One person thinks that their agenda is important when in reality it's actually complete opposite of what the company's vision is, and it conflicts with everybody else. And this can derail the success of your agency. And as a result, you're going to experience a lot of long hours, slow growth, or decline, and frustration, lost time, energy. And top talent really doesn't like stuff like this, and so you'll lose top talent eventually. And this is a good reason as to why a lot of companies will fail. So let's talk about popular systems, meaning popular operating systems. Really, the two we're going to focus on here is Traction and No Rules Netflix. The Great Game of Business and Measure What Matters, these are good books, but we'll get into this now. So EOS, this is really Traction, the book that you saw earlier on the far left-hand side here in the slide. You may have heard of EOS, and what it is, it stands for, I believe, Entrepreneur Operating System. And really the core of EOS is it's an operating system. And really the 6 components of the operating system is what you're seeing in this graphic. So it starts with vision, and vision is really just developing your mission, your vision, your core values, and making sure that everybody's aware of what that is, and you crystallize it on a piece of paper. You did this in the beginning of Agency Enlightened. I don't remember the exact module name, but you should have gotten clear on this. And then there's data, and this is really where it's talking about, keeping a pulse on your business and developing scorecards / KPIs, otherwise known as like ROCs or OKRs. These are just terms for different goal setting frameworks, and this is what they mean by scorecard. And just having measurables for everybody, again, KPIs, just what is this person's core number that they're working towards achieving, to give everybody crystal clear idea of what they need to achieve in their role to be ensuring that the company is as successful as possible and working towards the vision of the company. Important thing. A lot of companies don't give their people, hey, this is a metric that you need to hit. This is what's most important. And if you do this, you're contributing to the growth of the company. And if you exceed this, you're exceeding the average, yada, 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 right? And then there's process, which is basically, systemizing everything, documentation. We talked about this in the previous, in a previous model, which I believe was called systems thinking. And then there's traction, which is where they talk about quarterly ROCs, which is this kind of theme of like setting goals quarterly for individuals, and then a meeting pulse, so meetings. Then there's other things like, how do you solve issues when issues arise? An operating system should always have a way, a specific, well-defined process for solving issues. And then, of course, finding people, recruiting, managing talent, recruiting and managing talent, and obviously retaining them as well, and making sure that they're in the right seats. So these things are all actually, high-level fundamental things that are very important to the business, but this is really the core components of a good agency operating system, or just an operating system in general for any business. But we're going to go deeper on this here in a second. GGOB, which is the book called The Great Game of Business. This book is a little bit different. I like the operating system a lot more of EOS than I do of GGOB. But in essence, it's very similar, but a lot, in my opinion, a bit more simplified and gamified. There's a lot of similarities, and I would say that the big difference in GGOB is there's a heavy focus on equity and making sure that you distribute equity and you make people owners of the company, which, again, we're going to talk about this more, but this is not something that we need to go in depth on right now. So there's all these various different themes that are used in the book where they talk about that overlap with EOS, but I think EOS is done much better. Again, we're just going over high level a few different books. And Netflix, this was a really good book. Absolutely love this book. Everybody in our company has read this book. And the major things that they talk about in Netflix book is real virtues, which is like the values of a company, and how they shouldn't just be written, but they should be true and people should live them out daily. And then high performance, pay the best salary, freedom with responsibility, culture instead of control, promotion and development. These are 6 concepts that are discussed in depth throughout the book that are really great concepts. You may not agree with all of them, but some of them are just legendary to understand and implement within your own agency. And so I think that was a great book. And then there's Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And this book isn't actually really much of an operating system. It's actually more so a book about like a goal setting framework. Google uses this. I think Intel uses it. Actually, OKR started in Intel, and then Google adopted them, and many other companies have adopted OKRs. It's not something that I would consider an operating system, but I have it here because it is a good goal-setting framework that some of you may really like, and we have something similar. We kind of read about OKRs and decided to kind of manipulate it in our own way. But again, just going over high level what OKRs are, it's basically a way to set an objective and then find out what the key results are within that objective to measure the progress of it over time, and then how to have accountability to make sure that these objectives are obviously to the best of the team's ability hit and achieved. So now I want to talk about the BetterAMS operating system, because again, I just wanted to go through some really popular operating systems because I think everybody should go through those operating systems in more depth. But let's go a little bit deeper. So first of all, what we pulled out of this book, Traction, was the necessity. When we read this book, we had no vision, mission, or core values. It wasn't very clear. And we didn't have KPIs for everybody, which we needed. And we didn't really know how to have meetings. When we got to the point where we needed to hire our fourth person, we were like, holy shit, we need to figure out some type of meeting cadence, because it was quite chaotic and it was just three of us that really just randomly hopped on calls all the time, and we didn't feel the need to have like a standardized meeting every Monday morning or Tuesday morning or something like this, right? So out of this book, we really picked up a process for well-defined meetings and the purpose of those meetings, and figuring out what the KPIs are for everybody in their roles, and of course, right seat, right person, vision, mission, core values. From the Great Game of Business, you know, the two core concepts we really took out of this and implemented into our agency operating system was equity distribution and ownership. This is really only at the leadership level right now. There's only 3 people in our agency, BetterAMS, that have equity, and those 3 people make up the entire leadership team at the time of recording this video. And I wouldn't say that that you should read The Great Game of Business and think that you want to distribute equity, give everybody the chance to have equity in your agency. This is not something I'd recommend if you're a smaller agency. Maybe if you're doing, I don't know, $10, $25 million a year, you can start to think about how to figure out equity distribution, but this is a really expensive thing to do, especially when you're very small and you're doing, you know, $1, $2, $3 million a year. The concept that you should take away from it is that it is important to distribute equity to really key, extremely talented people that you would consider business partners and that you would get quote unquote married to in the business world. And this is something that really opened up my mind to say, okay, yeah, I don't need to have 100% of the equity. I do need to be open to giving up equity to other people that could become partners. And it goes in depth on equity distribution and lots of other things, which is really good. So equity distribution / ownership, becoming an owner of the agency, great concept that we took away from this. And we do preach to people in our agency, mainly because of this book, that we are open to giving equity if you become somebody that is indispensable and absolutely invaluable to the agency. And if you left, it would be detrimental. And that's really how equity is earned within our agency. So this is something that could be talked about more on a coaching call if you come on a coaching call, but the book goes over it quite well. Open book accounting is another thing that we took out of this. We were kind of doing open book accounting before we read this book, but OBM, it just simply means that everybody has access to the financials in the business, right? So we don't do this. We don't give our team in the Philippines or India, or actually I don't think we have a team in Pakistan, access to our financials, but everybody that's onshore, if you haven't heard me talk about onshore versus offshore is basically people with more or less first world salaries who are working directly with the clients, talking to the clients, or talking closely with leadership or something like this. These are people that have access to open book accounting. People that are offshore in the Philippines, they don't necessarily need it, so we don't give them access to it. There's not really any benefit if they have access to it, so we don't. And it's really just a powerful way to just say, hey, everybody has access to see our cash flow in the bank, what our profit was last month, last year, last quarter, whatever. You can see it. It's there. We do not share salaries. It's the only thing that we actually hold back from the OBM, open book accounting. And there's good reasons as to why that is. And this book actually talks about it, and other books have talked about it. And if you want to talk about more, we can talk about it on a coaching call. But these are 2 really core concepts we got from it that we've implemented into our operating system that have, in my opinion, made a big difference and helped us. So Netflix, this is a fantastic book. It talks about hiring top talent. And this is key because it allows you to lead with context, not control. Leading with context, not control is simply just, you tell somebody, hey, this is what I want, and you define the goal and the objective clearly, and you don't tell them how to do it, and then you just trust them to get it done, and they'll be able to get it done. That's what top talent can really do. And if you don't have top talent and you're hiring somebody that's fresh out of college or fresh out of high school and they really don't have any skills, then you have to lead with control because you need to train them. You need to watch over their shoulder. You need to shadow them. You have to you have to basically bring them up, raise them up, farm them to become great, to where eventually they could become top talent, but that can take years. and you can't lead with context, not control, if you don't have top talent and you're hiring, let's say, interns or something like this. And the third point that we really got out of Netflix is if you have top talent, you have to pay them top of market. Top talent should be paid top of market. There's some other really good concepts, but these are the three main ones we took away. To give a little bit more clarity, you know, this book gave us a lot of clarity on how we wanted to run a business. Because a business that has top talent, it doesn't, like I said, doesn't need to have extremely well-defined processes, SOPs. We don't need to just micromanage people. And as we were growing the business, we just didn't want to do this. We didn't want to have super standardized SOPs. We really just wanted to hire extremely talented people that can operate autonomously, so that we didn't have to worry about, you know, farming talent and managing them and looking over their shoulder and more or less controlling them for a period of time until they could be autonomous. And then kind of what started to happen is also like our industry became highly competitive, and it's forced us to pay like a lot in terms of what top of market is for the average person that we hire. And the average person we hire a lot of is an Amazon advertising specialist at this current moment in time. And because the salaries have become so high and it's impacted our margins, it's forced us to now begin looking at hiring cheaper talent, like i.e. interns, you know, or people who just graduated high school, or they're just a year out of university. And these are people that we need to train from the ground up and take like a, you know, McDonald's like blueprint approach, where we can hire them at half the salary of someone that we would hire that's a top talent, or maybe, you know, even less, like a third of the salary. And we could have really high margins on them, but it's going to take us 3, 6, 9 months to train them up and get them to the point where they can start to be autonomous, right? So these are the core concepts we took away from the Netflix. I think that you'll have a lot of great concepts that you'll take away from it, that you'll resonate with. That's what we took out of it. And then Measure What Matters, a fantastic book for goals, for like a goal setting framework. But I wouldn't say that it's needed if you're very small. Although I do think it's a legendary book, and everybody should read this book just because it really gives you clarity around setting goals. But it's not necessarily something that I would say is a necessity if you have like 3, 4, or 5 people. You can probably simplify your goal setting and not use something like OKRs. But really good book, and maybe you resonate with it deeply. Maybe you want to implement it and use it at 5 people. That's totally fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. Okay. But this book isn't an operating system per se. So these are the four books and the major takeaways that we have from each of them. The top 2 are the ones I would recommend that you read first, because these are ones that actually go pretty in depth into operating systems. And then The Great Game of Business also goes into an operating system, but it's a little bit different and not as good as the other 2 in my opinion. However, there's different concepts to be learned that are unique from the other 2. And then Measure What Matters is more just a goal setting framework. So what is the BetterAMS operating system? Let's go and check it out right now. Really, the BetterAMS operating system can be seen by looking at our culture canvas. We've done a lot of work on improving how we define our vision and our mission, our core values, etc. And we've kind of redesigned it to look as it looks now. And this really just tells us a lot about, tells anyone who reads it a lot about our operating system. So let's start with priorities. The top 3 cultural priorities using even or statements. Ignore the using even or statements. We didn't do that for all of them. Our top 3, starting with work ethic. Work ethic, this is a huge priority of ours, and it's basically because we want to surround ourselves with driven people. I personally can't stand people that don't have strong work ethic. It's just the nature of who I am. And the other 2 people in BetterAMS, Destiny and Alex, who currently are also partners of BetterAMS that are on the leadership team, they are very similar. And so it drives us nuts if we think somebody's, you know, not working more than like 4 or 5 hours a day or something like this. It's just we couldn't hire somebody like this. We believe that work ethic is important, so we made that one of our top priorities. And it's defined by it's not defined by hours worked, but rather by the balance between drive and working smarter. But with that being said, if someone was working an hour a day, I would be, it would blow my mind. Just it like makes my blood boil, more or less. So raising the bar of our talent. This is a huge and a very important priority. The people in any company is the biggest asset, and so it's extremely important to us that we are always, getting better at hiring people and improving our training. And then we prioritize being a team over a family. This was actually a concept that we got out of the Netflix books. I should have put this in the previous slide, but team over family. Why is that? Well, this hidden code. Oh, there it is. It's because, I'll just explain it without reading this word for word, but a family is, if it's your brother or sister, you put up with, for lack of a better word, their bullshit. Like if they say stuff that you don't like, you're going to unconditionally love them, most likely, because they're family, right? And it doesn't matter whatever they do or say, you're always going to put up with them and love them to the best of your ability. In a company, it should not be like this, because if somebody's underperforming or toxic to other people, this should not be tolerated. They should be immediately fired and removed from the company, or given, very strong warnings and given very critical feedback, because that person will ruin it for everybody else, and the whole company will then suffer because the top talent is going to leave because of one bad hire, and the rotten egg is going to rotten the rest of the eggs, and then before you know it, the whole company falls apart. So we don't want to say, hey, we're a family, because family kind of implies that we're not going to fire anybody, and we're going to protect everyone regardless of their performance. So that's not what we want to be. We want to be like a high performance sports team. This is really what we're striving for. And there's good descriptions here. You'll have access to this culture canvas, and just know that there's descriptions that you can click into and read that better define what each of these boxes mean, because these are all kind of just symbols, but these descriptions give greater depth. So those are our priorities, and then we have the purpose, which is the vision, more or less. And I think we can do a better job describing this, because this is more so a mission statement than it is a vision statement. But we strive to give the best experience and greatest results with the utmost efficiency. This is really, again, like I said, a good mission statement. I think we can update this and make this a lot better, because why do we exist is getting into the vision, right? How do we see the world, the utopia, once we've achieved what we've achieved, and that's what we work towards. And then the mission is like how you're going to achieve that. So this we can update. But then the values: culture, service, and being better. So culture is obvious. It's a lot. It's our vibes, the way we feel about working with each other, and the way anyone interacts with us. It's intangible, tangible. There's a lot that goes into culture that we could define. Service, this is just, we always want to give the best service and give the best experience to anybody that communicates with BetterAMS. Doesn't matter if they're a client or a random person on the street. Everybody that's within BetterAMS should be service oriented. And believe it or not, this is not something that's normal. There are so many people out there that we have rejected in our hiring process because they just weren't service oriented. You can tell. You can ask certain questions in your hiring process. And by the way, this is why defining your values is so important, because how in the world are you going to be able to hire the right person if you don't have a clear, vision, mission, core values, if you don't have a clear operating system? How are you going to be able to ask the right questions in the interview to know if this person's going to resonate with the operating system, with the way this company is, right? With the way you want it to be, etc. So be better. This is pretty simple. We're huge believers in just always bettering yourselves and bettering anything. And so always be learning, personal development. These are things that we all resonate with deeply. So that's the priorities, the purpose, the values. And more tangible stuff that we can get into. How do we celebrate our people culture work? We do a lot of different things. Year-end retreat. This is truly just a vacation with the team. At the end of the year, we typically do it in mid-January. Then we do a mid-year meetup. This actually just happened, and we recently did a meetup in Vegas for a trade show that was going on, and almost all of the team went to it and met up, and that was amazing. Coffee chats. We have these every week, and again, the goal of this is really just build more camaraderie amongst the team. Then we have game day on Thursdays. This is super fun, more camaraderie. Quarterly business reviews. We do this every quarter. We go over things like MRR, retention rate. We get feedback on everybody on what went well, what didn't go well throughout the quarter. And this is a super important meeting. So these are just like, recurring meetings that we do that are important. What you're not seeing in here is one-on-ones, but we actually, wait, let's see. No, I don't think one-on-ones is in here, but we do one-on-ones. Alex, our COO, does one-on-ones, I think, every other week. And he also does frequent one-on-one touch points with everybody throughout the business, because he's the COO and he has a really good pulse on what is going on across all areas of the business. So those are our rituals. Then feedback. How do we help each other learn and grow? You know, one way to do that is to just encourage frequent feedback. This is a concept that came out of the Netflix book, which is, again, this is why I'm highly recommending this book, because frequent feedback is so important, and it really allows you to build a better environment that just has a faster feedback loop. If you remember from the systems thinking module, if you've gone through that module, we need to have a feedback loop, right? Like, we need to understand the feedback, and the faster we get the feedback, the faster we can improve the system. And so encouraging frequent feedback is absolutely amazing, and it helps to get more feedback. So it's just a legendary feedback loop. And then quarterly role progression. This is something that we do. I mean, we just talk about role progression once a quarter. Again, Alex does this, and the leadership team, we also discuss this on our offsites once a quarter. We talk about everybody, we go through everybody, we talk about them and where they can progress within the company, and how they can progress quickly given their talents. Decision making. This is how authority is distributed. What methods do we use to make decisions? So just to pause real quick, like, you can kind of start to see how you can read this document and read the descriptions within it, within all these various different boxes, and get a really good idea as to how BetterAMS operates. That's really what we're getting at here. In one page, in one document, we have clarity around how this company operates. Few companies actually have something like this. And it really just allows you to have a better understanding as to how this business runs. What are the priorities? And it helps us to come back and see, okay, this is what we're currently prioritizing. There's a lot going on here. And to not have this one pager, like, to hold this in your mind, it's just way too much. You need something like a digital brain. You need to put it somewhere. And this is truly what it is. It's the operating system of our agency, although we define it as the culture canvas, right? So decision making, number one most important thing is act in the company's best interest. This is such a legendary concept. We also pulled out of the Netflix book. There's something similar in the book Traction, which talks about the EOS. But this is simple. Like, just, if you're faced with a decision, what is in the highest and best interest of BetterAMS? Simple question to ask. You'd be surprised at how powerful this is, and there's a lot of different examples I could give that are not in alignment with it. Here's a good example. We went to Vegas last year, and there was somebody who, just for context, when we go on a company retreat, pretty much all food is paid for. All food, all stay, like in a hotel, we try to pay for 100% of food and hotel, because that's really and flights. So that's the expenses. If somebody buys something on their own, that's fine, but we're going to cover their food and their bed and their flight. Okay, cool. Here's an example where somebody in our company met a friend who wasn't even in the industry that we were working in. It was just a random person in the hotel and had no relation to our industry. So there's no potential benefit for like signing a client or meeting somebody that's in our industry. It's just a random person, and decided to take this random person out for dinner. And this person bought like a steak and like a really expensive dinner. It was like, I don't know how much it was, $150 or $200 dinner, and it was 2 people. And then reimbursements, when reimbursements came around at the end of the trip, our COO was like, hey, what was this $200 dinner that you had? And the person in our company was like, oh, I met this person in the lobby of the hotel. She was really nice, and we just went for dinner. And yeah, I thought it'd be nice to just take her for dinner. And so we didn't, at the time, we didn't have this culture canvas, and so we didn't have this act in the company's best interest concept defined. But if she would have just asked herself, hey, is it in my highest and best interest, is in the company's highest and best interest to go for dinner with this person, random person, and also have a really expensive dinner? Like, absolutely not. And so that was a major conflict. And this is a simple thing. And now what we can do is, when somebody does something like this, we can say, hey, look, do you think this is in the best interest of the company? Well, clearly not. Okay, great. So let's not ever do that again. And let's make sure that when you make decisions, you're asking yourself this question. And if the person did it again, then we would have a really serious issue. We might let them go, right? But it's simple things like that. That's a very simple, small example, but those small examples are very important to pay attention to, because typically if somebody's taking somebody else out for a $200 dinner and it's a random person, and there's like for 2 people, that's insane. That's like super expensive. I mean, it would have been fine if they spent like 20 to like 40 bucks or something like this, but $200 is crazy. And that means that on a bigger scale, you know, could you imagine what they would do if they had more access to financial resources, or if they had more power in the company to make decisions? So you can see what I'm getting at here. Super important concept that we have here in our culture canvas. And it talks more about it in the Netflix book, and there's a lot of good examples. The second one, lead with context, not control. So when we have a goal in mind, we should be able to, you know, explain the context behind the goal and allow the person to achieve that goal. And we have some examples here that we give so you can better understand it, but I already talked about this briefly. Fundamental philosophy training. This is something where, you know, as we scale the company, we want to have, and we have this, we kind of have like a library or database, more or less, a matrix in Notion. Notion is our documentation tool that we use to document everything, where we talk about some of the core concepts and philosophies is the right word, that we really believe in. And so we want to have this basically installed into every human that joins BetterAMS, so that they can have similar, you know, mindset, similar thinking, similar decision making, similar, you know, understanding as everybody else that is in alignment with the vision and mission. So decision making, legendary, you know, aspect to define in your operating system. And then how do we convene and collaborate? So first of all, we always define the purpose of a meeting prior. We don't have a meeting unless we have a purpose defined. There's only a few recurring meetings that we have. We have the coffee chat. We have game day. We have a weekly, it's called Weekends and Wins. We have this every Tuesday where everybody just hops on, talk about their wins last week, work-related wins, personal-related wins, and then we talk about the weekend, what did you do on the weekend. It's typically, you know, everybody doesn't talk for more than like 30, 45 seconds, but it's a good way to bond and get some, you know, better understanding of everybody and their interests and everything else. And then we have action items are assigned to an owner. This is really important. So if there's like a conversation happening and somebody says we should really do X, Y, Z, and a bunch of people are like, yeah, that's amazing, we want to make sure in that moment somebody takes ownership or somebody assigns ownership. So, hey, John, can you do this? Or hey, Sarah, can you do this? You know, that's important. This is about, you know, where we're assigning ownership. Where previously, and this is very common in companies, and I did this for years, we'll have a conversation, yeah, we should really do that, and then it kind of just it gets lost and forgotten, right? And that's very, very, very common. Even for like important things that can really drive the growth in your agency, it can be lost and forgotten just because you didn't assign ownership or you didn't write it down somewhere and assign it to somebody. It needs to be assigned to somebody. So another key concept for our operating system is that. And if you can add value, speak up. This is a simple concept to understand, but again, if you can add value, speak up. You should never be shy. Always, always, always speak up if you can add value, and make sure you voice your opinion. Okay, so that's how we do meetings. Norms and rules. How do we clarify expected behaviors without hindering autonomy? Well, we prioritize mental health. That's a pretty simple one to understand. Be proactive. This is also quite simple to understand. We have great descriptions. And solutions over problems. So this one I'll explain. If you notice a problem and you, instead of like thinking of how we could fix the problem, you just immediately identify the problem and send it to somebody else and say, hey, you know, this is a problem here. We don't necessarily want that. We want people to identify a problem and come up with solutions, and then voice that problem and say, these are the solutions I could think of for fixing it. Obviously, there's certain scenarios where within the context of like, if you're not a software developer and you see a problem or a bug in the software, you shouldn't try to figure out how to fix it. That's obvious, right? But if you have the skill set and you're qualified to potentially come up with a solution to that specific problem, you shouldn't just be voicing it and throwing it out there and just saying, hey, this is a problem. This is a problem. You should be coming up with solutions. So we want people to just, ideally, if they have the ability to, solve the problem themselves, and if not, come up with ideas for solutions, right? Now let's talk about behaviors. So these are the behaviors that we address: poor communication, bad vibes, complacency. Pretty straightforward. Behaviors we encourage: delivering an incredible experience, great communication, and ownership and accountability. So those are all pretty straightforward. There is greater descriptions though. And then the psychological safety: how do we encourage everyone to speak up and promote participation and candor? Building emotional bank accounts is a really great concept that I think it came from Destiny, if I'm not mistaken. And it's the concept that, like, before you go and say and give critical feedback to somebody, or just giving critical feedback, you should build an emotional bank account. You got to be careful about what you say and how quickly you say something to somebody before you don't even have a relationship with them, right? And so what this means is it takes time to fund the emotional bank account with rapport, trust, candor. Think about EBA, emotional bank account, when interacting amongst other people, because once you have a strong emotional bank account, it allows radical candor and transparency to become 10 times easier. So it just allows you to give very critical feedback. Like, for example, if Destiny did something and I thought she did a really poor job, I have such a good relationship with Destiny to where I could just send her a DM on Slack and say, hey, this is shit. Like, you need to make this a lot better. Or like, hey, this is terrible. You need to make this a lot better. Hey, this is really bad. You need to make this a lot better. You can do a lot better. Okay, I'm personally not going to say something like that to somebody who is just onboarded to BetterAMS last week, and I have no idea how they are as a person. I have no relationship with them. I've never talked to them. And yet a lot of companies still do that, where somebody was just hired, they, let's say, build something, and then the founder or somebody above them that's been at the company for a couple years looks at it and says, this is terrible, this is garbage, and sends them that message and sends them that feedback. And that can be very detrimental to their mental health, because they don't have any emotional bank account with you. But if you have an emotional bank, if you have an established relationship, it's much easier. So yeah, be aware and be conscious of your EBA with the people that you're talking to and giving feedback to. And this will allow for greater psychological safety to make sure that everybody has, the best mental health possible. Radical transparency is also important. I mean, look, we have open book accounting. Everybody can see how much money we have in the bank, what our profit was, what our loss was, all the expenses. The only thing that's hidden is salaries, and we have good reasoning for why that's hidden. And other things in radical transparency, like all our systems and processes are shared the moment somebody joins BetterAMS. The moment they join BetterAMS, they get all the systems and documents and formulas for whatever we have. Like, it's really all there. They have access to almost everything, and including our books. So this helps us to promote, a culture in which everybody is not afraid to share their opinion and voice their opinion, right? So this is the last one. Everyone is heard. Pretty straightforward. We want to make sure everybody is heard and has a voice. The good concept here is feedback doesn't fall on deaf ears. Active listening. This is something Destiny's really big on, and active listening is pushed and improved upon in all areas of the business. Ask questions and actively try to understand all situations. So yeah, everyone is heard is really important, and the description of that better describes it. We really want to make sure we have active listening. We want to make sure that nobody says something and doesn't feel like they were heard, because again, this can be detrimental to their mental health, and that would be a poor environment in terms of psychological safety. So this hopefully should paint a really clear picture as to how we operate BetterAMS. And we can come back to this document and reference it for anybody in the company when they, let's say, aren't in alignment with it, right? Let's say somebody has been having really poor communication with clients. Cool. That's really easy for us. We can go to them and say, hey, this is not something that's acceptable in the company. You know this because you've seen our culture canvas. You know that one of the behaviors we address is poor communication. I just, want to figure out what's going on with you, and you can better address that problem. So it's a really legendary tool, I think, in my opinion, for not only giving you greater clarity on how your business operates, but also just more in depth when you're doing one-on-ones with people, when you're giving feedback, when you need to realign somebody with the vision of the company. This is a good tool to reference back to. It's a really good document. Okay. And this is how we've defined our operating system. Of course, you can do it in any way in which you like, but really this is how we've taken it, how we've done it, sorry. So that was a lot, but we got through it. Now, getting started. First of all, I think you should really read Traction and Netflix. This is the first step. These two books are absolutely legendary. The second thing to do once you've read these books is get your team to read the book that you like the most before you try and roll out an operating system. So if you really resonate with Netflix Suite, I think you should get your team to read that book. If you really resonate with Traction, you should get your team to read that book. If you resonate with them both really depth, I mean, you can totally ask people to read both, but just note it's gonna take time for people to read the books. So ideally you set a deadline like, hey, end of this quarter, we want everybody to finish reading these 2 books. That's realistic. Everybody can read a book a month or a book every month and a half. Team, once you got them to read the book, sweet, you need to get feedback. Ask the team for feedback. Hey, was there any thoughts, questions, concerns? And note that, when you're reading these books, there's going to be concepts that you don't agree with and that you don't like. And so make note of those concepts so that you can discuss those concepts in the feedback session when you hop on a Zoom call with all of your team and you are trying to get feedback from everybody on what they thought of the book. And again, the reason why we get people to read the book is so that they have all the context, all the knowledge as to why this is beneficial. It's difficult to say, just the leader of a company, let's say I read Traction, and then I go to implement Traction to the team, and I haven't done a good job of explaining all the benefits of Traction because they haven't read the book, they don't know it, right? And I don't want to spend hours upon hours trying to relay all the information that I just read that's in a book. I'd rather just buy the book, and that's a much easier way to get everybody on the same page, literally. So, once we've gotten some feedback from everybody, to roll out an operating system, we want to keep things extremely simple and easy. We can roll it out in chunks, consider it an experiment, make sure everybody's aware that, hey, this is something we're testing out. We're going to roll out something like this, yada, yada. It's not this big thing where, all right, this is it. There's no going back. It's never like that, obviously. And then pivot. Once you've ran an operating system for enough time and got enough feedback, pivot where necessary. Books, the ones that I didn't mention, Measure What Matters, Great Game of Business, these are great for having more ideas on building an operating system and making it better. Okay. And just to give greater clarity, when I'm talking about rolling it out, roll it out in chunks. Obviously, the most tangible stuff that you roll out that is easy to consider is like the meetings, right? How frequently do you do one-on-ones? How frequently do you have what is the meeting cadence? This is a very easy, tangible thing to understand in terms of what you could roll out with the team, right, and get feedback on. Some of the other stuff that's in here, like decision making, this is more intangible, I guess you could say, because it's not necessarily something you're going to do with everybody every week or every month or every quarter. So yeah, the stuff that you're typically going to be getting feedback on from is the more tangible things once you've done them, right? Such as like a year-end retreat or a mid-year meetup or coffee chat game days. Hey, what is your thought about game day? What's your thought about coffee chats? How do you feel about the quarterly business reviews? These are the more tangible things that happen and repeatedly happen with the team, one-on-ones, etc. These are the things that you can, when I say roll it out in chunks, consider an experiment, that's what I mean. You don't need to roll out a mid-year meetup, a year-end retreat, a coffee chat, a game day all at once. I don't recommend you do anything like that. Slowly roll things out in chunks. Even if you spend a lot of time defining something like this and you got it all perfect, don't try to do all this at once. It's just too much for everybody. So pivot. Once you've ran an operating system for enough time, okay, and you got enough feedback, you can pivot where necessary. If people hate game day, why do they hate game day? Oh, the game is terrible. Sweet. Adjust that, get the feedback, make it better, and, just keep pivoting and iterating and iterating. And then the books. Yeah. So I already went through this. And without further ado, we have this beautiful worksheet, and this is going to help you get clear on, again, getting started with this. So this worksheet does not have a video as of right now, and it's pretty straightforward. It just asks you what is an operating system. It explains what that is, the playbook, the benefits. This is pulled directly off the slides. And then we give the culture canvas that we defined here. The link is here. You can get access to it, and you should be able to, once you have access to it, you should be able to see the descriptions if you want to go in and get greater clarity on what something means. And then we have takeaways. If you want to see, okay, hey, what were the major takeaways that we took out of these books? You can see that here. And then we have the instructions for actually getting started and building your agency operating system. We just highly recommend that you read Traction and then Netflix, and make note of the concepts you like, the ones you don't, and then get your team to read the books before you try to roll out an operating system, and then get feedback from the team. Make sure you discuss the concepts you liked versus didn't like, etc. So that, without further ado, ladies and gents, is the worksheet. That's your only action item tied to this module. It's pretty straightforward, and let's get to work. All right, so let me know if you have any questions, and feel free to come on the coaching call to ask those questions or post it in the group. Much love, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this module, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.